Welcome to Inside Marketing with MarketSurge, your front row seat to the boldest ideas and smartest strategies in the marketing game. Your host is Reed Hansen, Chief Growth Officer at MarketSurge.
Today on Inside Marketing with MarketSurge, we're diving deep into the intersection of content, AI, and digital integrity with someone who's leading the charge in all three. Our guest is Jon Gillum, founder of Originality.AI, the tool that's quickly becoming the industry standard for AI content detection and plagiarism checking. Jon's not just a tech founder, he's a veteran in SEO, content marketing, and online business growth with a background in building systems at scale. If you're a marketer, agency owner, or content-driven entrepreneur trying to stay ahead of the AI curve, you'll want to listen closely. So let's jump right in. And Jon, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Reed.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, just as a form of introduction, could you tell us what inspired you to create Originality.AI and what gap in the market were you seeing at that time?
Yeah, sounds good. So yeah, my background was in SEO, content marketing, built up a content marketing agency, sold that in 2022. At the time, we were one of the heaviest users of Jasper AI, so kind of predating ChatGPT. And we had one part of that company that was transparently selling AI generated content to marketers. And then we were struggling to answer the question ourselves around, well, how do we know? We know we're allowing it in this part of the business, and we know we don't allow it in this part of the business, but what controls did we have in place to ensure that our policy was being followed? And so sold the content marketing business and then started down the journey of building Originality.AI, which was and is meant to be a complete content quality QA/QC tool for digital marketers and large volume publishers, launched with AI detection and plagiarism checking, and then actually ended up launching the Friday, and ChatGPT launched on the Monday right after.
Yeah, wow, that's fantastic. I have gone back through your blog archives, and you do a great job describing the difference in Originality, kind of like a unique value proposition versus other content detection tools. But like at a high level, what is the primary difference that could kind of illustrate what Originality.AI does differently?
Yeah, I mean, the customer that we focus on is the digital marketer, anybody that's publishing content on the web. That guides the rest of the decisions, which makes things like the training data set that we use to make our detector the most accurate, the false positive allowances that we will have, and then the other features that we'll build where we have a content optimizer or a fact checker, a readability checker. Whereas if you're building sort of a general AI checker, those features don't make a lot of sense. But if you're building for people that are publishing on the web, those are some really handy features to have for those individuals.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I think there are a lot of people in my audience that would fit that description. And, so I think your tool really addresses a key need. And, we'll talk a little bit more about the implications in education a little bit later. But I've definitely been generating AI content for a while. I was a Jasper user as well. And it is something that maybe gets a little overlooked, the ethics of plagiarism. What would you say is the primary risk calculation for an agency or a large volume publisher if they ignore the potential plagiarism in their AI generated content?
So I think the risk stems from Google, and that cascades up to agencies and writers. But the real risk for publishers is that Google is on a very clear warpath against mass published AI generated content. Not all AI generated content is spam, but certainly in 2025, all spam is AI generated. And so there's a lot of energy that gets put in by Google to try and sniff out and identify and punish sites that are mass publishing automatically generated text that they don't use. They sort of like weasel their way around saying AI because they want to be this AI forward company, but then they need to defend their search results from being totally overrun by AI. So that risk then cascades up. If that's the risk that exists with the website owner, then if they're hiring a content marketing agency to provide them content, they're the ones that ultimately own that risk and not the agency. And so they want to make sure that there's a policy in place and controls in place to ensure that the content that they're getting meets their standards. If they're saying no AI on our site, that's what they're wanting to make sure the agency upholds. And that translates into the same risk to the writer, where writers need to publish provide human generated content if that's what the requirements of policy are.
So, as an SEO professional, you've been doing this for years and had a successful exit. From my perspective as well, Google is constantly changing its algorithm, and we have to be very nimble. This is like another dimension of characteristics and decisions that these crawlers are making. How do you stay on top of this? How frequently are you having to adjust and modify your algorithm to be effective?
So it's been surprising where we've seen it. So we have to update based off of the different AI models. As new AI models come out, our detectability might not drop based on every new model that comes out. We've actually seen as new models come out, our efficacy, the amount that our accuracy drops is actually lower than it was on the previous model iteration. And so we have a red team and a blue team, we call them, within our AI research team, where our red team is always trying to beat the detection tool, and the blue team is always trying to make our detection tool better and better and better. And so it's a constant process that is always ongoing. But the starting guns for checking if anything has changed is every time a new foundational model gets released.
That is really interesting. Do you find that the businesses that are going to see the most return on investment using a plagiarism checker, are they the same that would see the return on investment from effective SEO best practices outside of AI? Or is there some areas where plagiarism checking is particularly effective?
Yeah, I think that's true. I think there's pockets, there's other risks. So I think the main risk is definitely that if you mass publish AI generated content, Google will find you and hurt you. And then I think there's other risks around reputational harm, where AI can hallucinate and confidently bullshit and result in the publishing of factually inaccurate information, which hurts your brand. And so I think there's other risks, but I think those are very much secondary to that sort of primary risk around the results that direct publishing AI content will have in Google.
Interesting. But among your customer base, have you seen your pitch, your offer be more effective to certain niches or anything?
Marketing agencies. So that they feel the pain immediately. So a publisher, that if they could publish 1,000 AI articles today, and they might not see an impact tomorrow, but they certainly will over a period of time. Whereas an agency, if they're trying to provide, pay the writer whatever the rate is, mark that up, pass it on to the customer. If there's not transparency in that process around where AI is being used, where plagiarism is occurring or not occurring, that is pain that is immediately felt because the transaction doesn't happen. And so the client might say, I'm not paying for this AI content. The writer might not get paid if they push the AI content. So this sort of immediate pain is felt on the content marketing agency side, where they need to drive transparency between the writer, the editor, the agency, and the client. And that's where we find a lot of really, really good fit with customers.
Oh, that's great. That's great to hear. Something that we touched on earlier, and this is outside of the business realm, but I have a daughter that's applying to college, another daughter who's a freshman in high school, and I've seen this pop up occasionally on news feeds that students are using AI generated content to submit papers, submit assignments. Obviously, that is pretty easy to do. And these AI tools are so cheap; they're very accessible to young students. In some cases, they get free accounts. Let's talk a little bit about the implications there in the education space. And is a plagiarism checker like Originality.AI, is that going to be the solution, or what do you think?
Yeah, so an area we've thought a lot about, not the area that we had sort of a clear understanding of when this launched, but as soon as we launched, ChatGPT launched a few days later, the implications for academia became incredibly clear that this was going to be something that was going to be used by students, and then very quickly it was clearly being used by a lot of students. I'll describe maybe the journey a bit that we've gone on, sort of while we've been thinking about this, and that sort of academia has also gone on. At first, they're like, is this perfect? Or AI detector is perfect at identifying AI generated content, and can you prove why this piece of content was AI generated? And the reality is It's a little bit like asking ChatGPT, why did you write X? Like these are AI systems themselves. They are highly accurate, but imperfect. 99% of the time they will call AI, and then like 1 to 3% of the time they might incorrectly call human AI. That's really accurate, great metrics for a lot of use cases. That for the use case of sort of dueling academic disciplinary action, when you have an imperfect system with no provability, that's really, really hard. So sort of the initial reaction from academia was like, you're not perfect. We're not using detectors. And then they're like, holy crap, we're being absolutely overrun by AI content. We know this is all AI content. What do we do? And then that's when the adoption of AI detection tools became far more widespread. We still didn't love our tool being used within that setting because we don't think it's the sort of ultimate solution for that problem. I think sort of the defense of the assigned writing as an educational instrument isn't going to come in the form of AI detection, but it's more likely going to come in the form of environment management, sort of writing environment, spyware, and we didn't want to build that solution. So that's been kind of our journey down that path. I think it's going to be. I think the wrestling with how to manage AI is going to be a never-ending battle that now academia faces. I think that detection will continue to play a role in that space, but I don't think it can be the ultimate solution because it's highly accurate but not perfect. And when you're dealing with academic disciplinary actions, you need to be pretty near perfect and provable.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. Now, to extend to besides academic discipline, obviously there are potential misuses for the academics themselves. I don't know if that's any different, but when there's actual like facts and established science at stake, I can't imagine how potentially dangerous that could be, as somebody's trying to produce like a groundbreaking research and just half-assing it, like how do you think that might be a more realistic use, I guess, the academics to kind of like, let's hit the brakes on this and let's double check the results? Or
Yeah, so we've seen a lot of users. I think there's a ton of use case where people are using AI in their research process, in their ideation process. They're working with it while they're thinking through something. And then at what point does it turn from all AI thought to all human thought? And when should it be called AI? And that's a really tricky question. We see a lot of people going through this really iterative process around research, but they want their final work to be human and their own thoughts and make sure that no AI accidentally slipped into their work. The way we see a lot of users doing that is they'll check at multiple steps along the way and see what part of the text is being identified as AI, and then dig into like, maybe I did copy and paste that section, or maybe I did write that verbatim from what I had read. So that's how we see those deep research projects where it's a really iterative process back and forth with AI, but then the final output they want to be human. That's how we see them interacting with our tool.
Yeah, that's interesting. Well, back to the business world for a minute. Can you tell us a little bit about, so a lot of sales are driven by ROI. Every business is trying to, they take the investment required and they want to make sure that they get a return. And you've described a process, where it does help in each step of the process to use Originality.AI. But tell us a little bit about how, if somebody were saying like, well, if I sign up for your tool, how can I think in terms of return? Because it does seem like it's sometimes like risk mitigation is a little harder to define. But I mean, obviously you've had these conversations, so I'm curious how you define the ROI on using this.
So especially for our ICP, like for the marketing agency type content publisher, our tooling that we provide makes the job of a copy editor far more efficient. And so the savings that companies experience when using our tool compared to using their previous method of editing is significantly more efficient. And so it's sort of a no-brainer for that tooling set where the cost very reasonable and the labor saved and the time saved on a copy editor side is significant. And we got some other features that are going to be really fun that are rolling out as well that are going to help them even more. So they're sort of generating positive return there, because I agree that selling mitigation, the first person that sold life insurance must be the best salesperson ever, because
Right.
how, like, now it's been established and it's been paid out, but it's like that first contract, that would have been a fascinating sale that would have occurred. And so the mitigation side, I think it's those that are used to dealing with Google are also very used to dealing with risk mitigation,
Right.
and dealing with the sort of there's both the upside and the downside, and the calculus around return is not always as clear as you might wish it was. Like, investing in SEO is not a direct correlation. Give me $1,000 and I'll get you two places up higher up in the rankings. That's how it got sold a long, long time ago, but that's not never how it worked, and it's certainly not how it works now. And so I think the understanding of our customers around risk mitigation is pretty advanced, because anybody that deals in Google, that's the world that they live in and breathe. So I think the ROI on the publisher side, that's clear, and then it is a risk mitigation sale. But I think a lot of our ideal customers are very used to that thought process.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's helpful. And yeah, you're totally right. It's like you do have to shift the conversation, because risk is like, you want to think about that after. But I would see, I mean, I think I have observed in my own experience, keyword embedded content becoming less and less effective. And, there's just, it's so muddy now. There's so many other factors that anything I could do to sharpen the impact of what I can produce looks like growth. And, and I think there's definitely some demand for that among people that know the SEO space. Now, as a business founder, how because I have a lot of entrepreneurs in my audience, and so to go back to the founding of the business, how have you most effectively spent your time? I mean, are you very hands-on with the coding of the tool, or are you more in the business development or marketing? Where do you spend most of your time on the business?
Yeah, product and marketing
Okay.
is where I sort of live most of the time. So I'm a mechanical engineer, but not a technical founder. And so I can whip up a spreadsheet, but not code. And product roadmap, identification of opportunities, sort of analyzing analytics, talking to customers, sort of that product role. I spend a lot of time there. It's also kind of the world that I come from in terms of as a user of what this tool would be. So I think, not a great hit. I mean, I don't think anyone ever has a really great hit rate with sort of product ideas. We're okay on our product ideas. Some of them have been great. Some of them have been a little bit of duds. And then on the marketing side, a lot of effort there. The marketing team is led by, like, we have a marketing lead that runs the team, but I definitely get in there and cause a little bit of chaos.
Are you an AI user in your day-to-day work?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, all
Any
the time. I
examples, like
mean,
what?
my writing is terrible. I mean, it's hilarious that sort of, like, I had a content marketing agency and now have a tool that helps people with the writing. I would way rather think in spreadsheets than written word. And so I use it all the time for internal communication, because I just, like, dump my thoughts into, like, a trained GPTs, and then it spits out some, really, it's like, oh, that's what words should communicate. I get it. That's way better than what I communicated and way more succinctly. So yeah, I use it all the time. Data analysis, it's great for that. I use it for that almost daily. Um,
Okay.
but yeah, all the time.
That's fantastic. Now, I like to ask guests that come on the podcast, and I'm particularly interested in your insight, but what do you see as like the near and far term futures of AI, whether it's in business or in our personal lives? What would you say are, uh, sorry, my phone is ringing. I'm going to pause just one second. So I really like to ask all my guests on the podcast, and particularly somebody like you with your experience in AI and both as a user and working in that space. But I would love to hear what you see as the future of AI in business in the near term and potentially in the coming years. What changes should we plan for? Any future risks that we should be thinking about?
I think this might undersell it, but a way I like to think about it is I mentioned I was a spreadsheet guy. If you were to sort of look back at the history of GDP per capita and that growth, and you were to say, where did spreadsheets start to move the needle for this business? I think you would not be able to identify where, but certainly if you took out spreadsheets, businesses would collapse. There's so many businesses that are run off the back of tons of spreadsheets. And if spreadsheets were removed, they're sort of everywhere. Every businesses use them. They're mission critical for businesses, but it's like they're just kind of there and forgotten about. And I think that's a reasonable comparable for AI, where AI will be far more big and sexy and dynamic than spreadsheets. But I think it'll be similar, where it's just become totally ubiquitous with your constant interactions. Scheduling meetings will become like AI looking at your calendar, solving it. It's like they'll just be based into Gemini in your Gmail or Google or whatever system you're using. So I think it's going to be a part of every part of your day, and every business will adopt it. The sort of level of impact that it has will not be the step change felt, but I think it'll be just as it gets more and more integrated and drives efficiencies wherever it gets integrated, will be this impressively scaling capabilities within all organizations.
Well, I'm excited. I love AI and have enjoyed the reach it gives me. It can kind of magnify my efforts. And I'm glad that there are checks in the system like Originality.AI to help keep things genuine and authentic and not plagiarized. And, I think you're doing great work, and we'll be a user and use this for our clients as well. This is something that, as I learned about your business, I think is going to be essential for SEO and even just an ethical concern. I think it's something businesses should control for. So thanks for your work on this.
Yeah, no, thanks. It's fun. We didn't set out to build sort of a societally important business, but certainly with the rate of adoption of AI, it's become societally significant to have guardrails in place around the adoption, both ethical development of AI, and then I think we're on sort of the ethical use side of AI and play a bigger part in that than we set out to play. But it's fun, a little intimidating, but lots of fun.
Fantastic. Well, Jon, where can listeners find you if they'd like more information about you or about Originality.AI?
You can contact me at Jon, Jon, at Originality.AI, or sort of not super busy on any social platform, but LinkedIn, I'm kind of the most frequent there.
Fantastic. Well, Jon, thank you so much for your time today and insight into this space. You're really a pioneer and a leader, and really impressed with what you've put together. So thank you.
Want to stay ahead of what's actually working in marketing right now? Head over to MarketSurge.io and see how we're helping businesses grow smarter, faster, and louder. That's MarketSurge.io, because your next breakthrough shouldn't be a guess.